Also want to talk about Ralph Rangnick and Anthony Elanga. Here's Rangnick talking to Paramount and BT Sport about Elanga, who scored the equaliser last night after he came off the bench. Have a look.
To be honest, on the very first day of training, that was the night before the first game against Crystal Palace, he was the best player in the training session, so I asked my colleagues, who is he? I knew his name, but I didn't know him at all. He had almost left the club at the time on loan to another club. And I told him after that training session, listen, I want to see you here for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, since then he just has improved. He's playing with all the energy that you need for that game. He's extremely fast. He can shoot with both legs, left and right leg. He can also score with his head, what he did against Brentford. And yes, it's just fun to see him play. I wish a few other players would take him as an example or like a almost role model, I would say. Not because he's doing everything right, but he's just enjoying himself on the pitch, and that's what it's all about. We know that football is an important sport, ball game, and even more so for our supporters or for the media, but it's still a ball game, and you have to enjoy yourself on the pitch. And this is what I would wish us to do in the future, also when we play them again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, such a well-run club that they were about to send Anthony Elanga out on loan to the Championship to get
wherever his name is,
some time in the man's game.
Wherever his name was meant to go to a club, whatever the name was, and it didn't happen. And thank God he stayed. Whatever his name is.
Well, there is a bit of I came and spotted this thing, and he scored this goal, and it's all because of me. There's a little bit of that. There's definitely the post-fact rationalisation by the manager, bigging the manager up there. It's like a subtle enough. I was the only one who could see this guy who the club have obviously had on their books for a long time.
You've been too cynical, AJ. You've been too cynical. I'll give Rangnick a bit of credit again in terms of, we're talking about Conte, projection, your post pre-match. No, but I think he's very honest and quite open in terms of his interviews. You know what I mean? Again, I don't get that bit of a sense of anything, somebody with a bit of an agenda here type thing, or big ego, that type of thing. You know what I mean? I don't get much of a sense of that to give him, you could criticise him to a small extent in terms of performances, etc., since he's come in and where's the club going and the whole shebang. But generally speaking, I think he's actually carried himself quite well. So I'd take a little bit of issue in terms of your cynical attitude.
I know. I'm gently trolling him because you speak to the Man United fans and they all really like the fact that he comes in and says, we played badly, these guys played badly, this guy isn't in my team because he won't do what I need him to do today. There's a truth about what he's saying, and it's diagnosing all of the issues that Solskjaer would have been like, oh, they're all great, great.
Tuchel's a bit the same, isn't it? I think that's refreshing. I think a lot of people, I actually enjoy listening to Tuchel speak. He'd done it again the other night. Very open in terms of, hey Thomas, could you tell us how you might set up? So yeah, I'll tell you. But flat back four, I'm going to play one holder, two number eights. This is what I expect out of possession. This is what you're going to see when we get possession. You're going to see plenty of rotation. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And this is 40 minutes before kick-off. And it's real. And post-match the very same. They actually give you an awful lot, maybe too much, some people would suggest. But it's actually fascinating to listen to. Now he's Rangnick wouldn't be as technical maybe as Tuchel, but I think the principle's still the same. I'm prepared to be open here and be as honest as I kind of can with you.
He was very honest once again in breaking down his own tactical decisions last night. He said, after 7 minutes we were 1-0 down and the plan was in the dustbin. I knew this was not Lindelof's best position at right back for anyone who didn't see the game, but when we had Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the ball and Alex Telles, we had more possession and more assistance from the wings. And then he says, what we played in the first half, I still cannot believe we played without conviction, without aggression, and that is why we were struggling. Is that what you want to hear from your manager, Kenny, that that acceptance that playing a centre back at right back was not the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think you can get away, not too often. You can't. Don't think you can be constantly rolling up after every single game and say, look, hands up, I've had a shocker there again. But that's me, that's Ralph. Let's get it out there, let's be honest. Yeah, so I think every so often you can, people suck it up, and he's right. He got all scratching our heads a little bit last night. We saw Lindelof, we're talking back three here, but who's going to play the wing back? Then you thought, well, no, it looks like a back four. And I didn't understand the argument. He played well at the weekend, don't get me wrong. Lindelof against Leeds, he had a couple of little forages up the pitch, but I mean, that's the exception to the rule. If you watch Lindelof play, and we all have the last couple of years, that's not a feature of his game in terms of like drifting into midfield and providing a real kind of cutting edge and attacking threat. So to suddenly think, I'll put him at right back and we'll actually get a bit out of him going forward. Also he's going to be rock solid defensively. I really wasn't kind of buying into that, especially when you got someone like Wan-Bissaka. If your mentality is I want my best defender at right back for the game, if you're thinking potentially Thomas Lamar's going to play it over that side of the pitch, I need to get my strongest defender there. It's got to be Wan-Bissaka. Now Wan-Bissaka has his limitations going forward, which is kind of what's holding him back a little bit.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, he's very solid defensively. His athleticism, his speed. A couple of times last night, Lindelof struggled a little bit. João Felix dropped the shoulder, burst acceleration. He struggled a little bit, hacked him down, got his yellow card, and was a bit of a struggle for him. So, yeah, so it was the wrong decision. He's held his hand up, and he's right. First half, that performance was indirectly. I mean, you can't be washing your hands of that to a certain extent. I mean, that was awful. He's gone, that's awful first half. No conviction, attitude. It was all wrong. Boom, boom, boom. But unfortunately, that's the manager.
Exactly.
And ultimately, that's going to...
You can diagnose the problem, but it's not like you're a bystander. You sent the team out to play like this. They are responding to the team that you picked and the instructions that you've given them, and they're not clear on what you were trying to achieve, right?
I don't think it's simple as that either, to be honest, because some of the basic fundamentals there last night, yeah, what people were doing was just like, it's just rubbing my eyes. I mean, Pogba and Fernandes, I mean, it was... the amount of... But the ball they turned over was literally incredible. The amount of times they received the ball and gave it away. Now people say, "Oh, Pogba, typical Pogba." That's not typical Pogba. One of Pogba's greatest strengths is his ability to retain possession and manipulate the ball and keep possession. Fernandes as well. And I mean, Fernandes has had a erratic season in some respects, but you can generally hang your hat on him in terms of giving the ball it sticks and he completes the next pass, and he couldn't. And those basic fundamentals from those two players, so that's very difficult for me. I find that very difficult to throw that at the manager and say, "Well, that's your responsibility." I don't really think the tactical setup, what he was asked him to do, information he was giving them, to a large extent came into play there, Jared. I think those players in particular have to have a look at them, have a look at themselves. But just when you're about, with Manchester United, I find, just when you're about to throw the towel in, and must be the case with the majority of Manchester United, and say, "That's it. This is it now. I'm absolutely finished." They suddenly dig deep. They done it again the weekend against Leeds, 2-0 down, got back to 2-1. You're thinking, "Oh, here we go," and suddenly they found something. They kind of pulled together at Ellen Road at the weekend. And found something that last half hour of the game, and they did it again last night. Second half, they started to fight. About 10-15 minutes into the second half, you just got a sense of, right, here we go. Let's roll up our sleeves a little bit. Let's start competing. No, I don't think it was that simple. But it just felt slowly. Start winning a few tackles, start winning second balls, and slowly but surely began to pull themselves back into the game. So you'd have to begrudgingly, even if you don't admit, there's something there. There's a bit of that. That's not a dressing room that's totally broken, Jer, where everybody's, it's all fractured. Yeah, the whole place is fractured. I'm all right, Jack. You can't just. I saw that last night, and that'd give you a bit of hope, give you some kind of hope going forward as a Manchester United supporter.
Can I ask, is it not a free pass, but is it a mitigating factor when you try and go back even 24 hours to previewing this game and Atletico Madrid? There was a lot of question marks about what Atletico Madrid are this season, where like they've drawn as many games 2-2, more games 2-2 than they've won games 1-0. This kind of robust, I guess, deep defensive line element of Atletico Madrid had somewhat changed this season, but yet there was an expectation that maybe on a Champions League night against Manchester United they would go back to the sort of Atletico that beat Liverpool 2 seasons ago. That Rangnick himself just wasn't sure and was ultimately proved wrong in his prediction about what way Atletico would set up, and that he reacted well when he did realise what version of Atletico would show up. Is that giving him too much credit?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't see anything in that Manchester United setup last night. Even Lindelof at right back. I'm saying, we thought Lamar would play out. I don't think he did. I didn't get an indicator of that even in terms. It felt to me as if, well, Lindelof had a great game at the weekend. I had to keep him in the team. You could easily flip that the other way and say he actually wasn't strong enough in terms of taking the strong decision. Varane's going to come back in, so either Maguire or Lindelof has to step out. It's as simple as that.
We're going to get to Harry Maguire. Don't worry. We're going to get to Harry Maguire, Kenny.
Take your pick between Diallo and Wan-Bissaka. I've seen it with managers before. The easy decision in those circumstances is to play your more experienced, the bigger personalities, keep them on the pitch, almost keep them on side, which is what he did last night. But I didn't see anything there set up last night that I thought, that's interesting. He's changed that. He's tweaked with that because of what he's going to potentially face tonight. I mean, in terms of the setup, it was no different. The midfield too. You couldn't say Pogba and Fred in central midfield. Fernandes playing off the front, his usual number 10 position. Sancho and Rashford off the flanks. Ronaldo. There was nothing special. There was nothing unusual. The shape of the team, the personnel. There was no indicators there. Oh, this is interesting. What he's actually doing, because potentially what's going to come at him from Atletico Madrid. So I don't think there was. I didn't think he overthought it in terms of how Atletico were going to play. Pretty predictable Atletico. You know, that kind of high press, high energy, particularly in the early part of the game, first half. That kind of dropped off second half, and United kind of slowly worked their way back into the game. So they didn't show me anything in particular, Atletico, in terms of how they played. It was difficult to say actually at times. They kind of morphed a little bit in terms of their formation. At times it looked like a back five, narrow three in midfield and a front two. But that was almost 4-4-2 at times as well. They're actually quite flexible in terms of how they kind of set up. But they did drop off second half, and to be fair to United, they wrestled their way, they kind of dragged their way back into the game. So that was kind of impressive. It wasn't the highest quality game, you know, in terms of what we were seeing, but
well, if we're talking about high quality headers, though, I mean, the Joao Felix goal was pretty special. As a heading aficionado yourself, Kenny, I mean, you were probably sitting back at that, you're like, wow, Felix hooked this to my veins. What give us a rating out of 10 on that header.
Well, considering the only league goal that I scored in my professional career actually came about as a result of a diving header.
Was it your dive?
There's no video footage available of that. Unfortunately, you'll have to take me word of it.
Liam Brady against Belgium, Frank Stapleton against Belgium in '86, kind of diving header.
I'd say Van Persie
was Alan
against
Sunderland, the cup final Arsenal. You'd know this, Jerry, wouldn't you? Late 70s.
Way before my time. Legitimately way before my time.
Was that Liam heading down the left, ball in Wembley? Alan Sunderland, was it? Near post header. Kind of iconic headers, obviously we're talking about goals, but this was, you're right, this was pretty special because he was literally, almost had to throw himself at the ball, didn't he? Joao Felix, it was a brilliant header, so the time and just get the accuracy was fantastic. I mean, I don't know, you can always pick goals apart. I think it's interesting on the goal, he gets a little run on Harry Maguire, so it's amazing really. Maguire, you're saying we're going to talk about him, but it's just unfortunately it's the way he's made. You can see Joao Felix get that run a split second before him, he's in motion. I think when they were showing the replay of the game last, they freeze it when the ball's being delivered off the foot of Lodi on the left hand side. And if you look at Maguire and Joao Felix is he's in motion, so his momentum's taking him forward, and Harry Maguire's at that moment is flat footed. So now immediately he's got to change his body shape, Maguire, and actually accelerate and try and match Joao Felix. That just can't happen. He can shift that amount of body weight in that quicker time that he needs to do. You know, he either needs to read it earlier and be smarter, step across the player, put himself between the player and in the line where he wants to make the run, or actually just recover earlier into the space and actually give himself an extra yard or two start on the player. One or two of those two things has to happen, because fundamentally he hasn't got the kind of leg speed, the athleticism to deal with that type of run. As great a ball as it was and as great a header as it was, like I've said to you before, it's never been a goal scorer that couldn't have been defended better. So, just although you couldn't say, "Oh, Maguire's had a stinker there," you know what I mean? Put that in his portfolio. His fault, another goal.
If you've never seen it before, you're thinking amazing goal. But the fact that it kind of encapsulates so much of the issues that Harry Maguire has, it's a good example of just a little bit that stops him from being a top quality defender.
Yeah, no, you're right. He's not perfect. He's fallible. It's as simple as that. He's got his frailties, and he had them when he walked in the door at Manchester. And the things that we're talking about there have always been there.
Yeah, he hasn't got any better, has he?
No,
like you wouldn't say.
That'll never get any better. That kind of athleticism.
But good coaching and experience, you would expect
Oh yeah, you can mitigate against it, absolutely.
And there's no evidence of the mitigation of his faults in his career so far at United, is there? Like, he hasn't become a better player. He hasn't.
For me, I think it's confidence with him. I think he's actually a good reader of the game, Maguire. I think it's what helped him to get to this point to begin with, because things that we're talking about in terms of lack of athleticism and that kind of speed, I think he recognises that, and to counteract that, I think he actually reads the game very well. And if you remember his first kind of 6 months, you could argue year at United, we weren't talking a huge amount about this. It was there. There was a couple of small examples of it. We weren't seeing a huge amount of it, probably because of reasons that we're talking about, because he's clever, because he drops into this space early, anticipates things, gets players around him, that kind of game intelligence you were talking about. I think he's got a bit of that to him. But unfortunately for me, it's almost a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
You know, he's made a few mistakes, high profile. They've been commented on. People are talking about him. That can't be. I've never had that. That can't be easy.
What's the way out for Manchester United and Harry Maguire? How do they get somebody to take him off their hands and look to move on? Because
it's not a guarantee that'll happen. I mean, I think there's an argument there for we got to keep this fella. We got to help rebuild his confidence. There's still enough there in terms of, we know the qualities that he has, his football and ability. He's pretty dominant in both penalty boxes in terms of an area I'm talking about.
We call this the fallacy of sunk costs, where you try and recover your investment even though you pour more and more money down the hole and the hole gets deeper.
But in terms of centre halves in the modern game, Jay, the perceptions change, like in terms of what modern day manager and coaches are looking for. Back in my day was like, can you head it, tackle, reading the game, does he organise, is he a good talker?
He can do all that.
So all these type of things. But how quick is he over the ground? But it was defensive. You're tick boxing real kind of the fundamentals, the building blocks of being a defender. But that conversation changed some time ago to, well, how good is he on the ball? You know, can he step into midfield? Can he be the extra man? Can he break the lines with his passing? That type of thing became more into the equation. It was more around the discussion in terms of this is what we're after in the centre half. So now suddenly the fact that he's actually not the quickest thing on two legs, he struggles a little bit in his recovery. Suddenly that's it's a factor, but you know what? It's not the be all and end all. You know what I mean? Because he'll go and get us half a dozen goals over the course of the season, set pieces. He's actually got the ability to step into midfield and set our attacks off. You know, this is what you
think he can do that. But
I think there's an argument there. It's not an argument I'd make. I've got to be honest with you.
And your argument, I think, would be, if we can get something back from him, let's get something back from him and try and find the next player who is actually going to be genuinely, potentially world class. Because we've seen his ceiling. He's as good as he's going to get for us. Maybe with a bit of better coaching, some world-renowned defensive coach comes in and works with him, or manager comes in and goes, yeah, you're my guy, and he steps up to the best level he can be. And the very best level he can be is like not a centre back that any of the other top four teams really want.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Harry Maguire, the top managers now, the biggest clubs, generally speaking, give or take, want to play the same way. They want to play that high pressing game, and to play a high pressing game, you need to be able to commit the majority of your team high up the pitch more often than not. And you need to be comfortable isolating your two centre halves in 1v1 situations for a fair chunk of the game. You have to have the confidence in your two centre halves to do that. And Harry Maguire will never be comfortable in that situation. So now you have to compromise, and now there's a massive knock-on effect in terms
everywhere.
Of how you actually set up.
You can't press.
Exactly. Now you got to drop. You got to play more of a lower defensive block. Because of Harry Maguire, you got to get people around. You got to narrow up your fullbacks a little bit,
and that's not what's happening in world football.
Is that too much a price to pay? I think it probably is.
Right.
So if you're asking me what I do, what Harry Maguire goes out the door and somebody gets as good a deal, as much money as you can for him, I think somebody would probably pay you 35 million for Harry Maguire. For the reasons that I'm saying, the qualities that he has.
He's a 30 to 35 million player.
So I think you suck it up, you take the money, and you go. And
Dear
you go
Newcastle.
Reinvest.
Are you interested in talking to us about any of our players? We find that they will exceed your expectations, particularly if they're very low. Harry Maguire is available for 25 million.
No, I think you're right. I think that's it. You got to get somebody who's going to take him off your hands, and a big wage there, so that kind of reduces potentially the pool of clubs who are going to take him on. But that's a big decision for the new manager when he comes in. That's a real big decision. I think you got to make that one quickly. Whether you're going to try and build a team around him, you think he's got those qualities are good enough to build a team and suck up the deficiencies, or no, we go again. Okay,
here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock on the show. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We've obviously been talking with Kenny about the Champions League stuff, and we'll talk about Liverpool in a moment. Our World Cup of Manchester United defenders. This is inspired by Daniel Harris in yesterday's show. We'll talk to you about the sports pages. And the sports news between 8:30 and 8:35. John Duggan. Power rankings for hurling at 8:40. Miguel Flato is a Mexican film director who is in Dublin at the moment with a movie that is screening tonight in the Irish Film Festival, Dublin Film Festival, and at Clifton Wednesday Night Rugby at 9:30 to play you out, as it looks like Sexton's going to start. Certainly that was he was out yesterday saying I'm fit and ready to go.
Yeah, if you're doing media the week of the game and then don't start, you're either A, Seamus Coleman, or B, you've been screwed over in a different way. So just quick tangent here, sorry. There is no video evidence of your goal online, Kenny. I've been frantically scrambling. It was against Portsmouth in a 2-2 draw in April 1994. But you did score in the Anglo-Italian Cup as well, but unfortunately no evidence of that, Kenny.
They didn't televise the Anglo-Italian Cup.
Would have a field day with that.
So you 2 goals, not one.
How was that possible? How was that possible? Nothing on camera.
In the age of the internet. Nothing from April 1994.
Thank God.
But if anybody out there, any Millwall or Portsmouth fans have any footage of that, we would...
Do you want me to describe my goal against Charlton? Do you want a description of that?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Anglo-Italian, 30 yards, screamer, left foot.
No way.
Left foot. I remember counting the amount of bobbles as it was on its way towards the goal. I counted 6 before the last bobble took it over the outstretched arm of Bob Boulder, who was the Charlton goalkeeper at the time, you'll remember, and trickled into the corner of the net.
Look, they all count.
They all count, lads. They all count.
Did you take many shots? Like, is your efficiency rating unbelievably high? 1 header on target, 1 goal, 1 shot on target, 1 goal.
I'd say my completion rate is probably about 93%. It has to be. So I probably took about less than.
You just needed a manager to put his arm around you and go, you go for it, Kenny. Every time you take a header, every time you take a shot, it's a goal.
Do you know what it was? First few years, when I remember being at Millwall, and as you do, young pros and that in digs, and got into the training ground early most days and left late. Just what else was there to do? I wasn't heading down the bookies or the booze with the lads at all.
Boozing or gambling, that was it.
But so get in early, coaches bag of balls out, and the forwards would come in. So I'd be dragged out. Shooting, I'd be there smashing balls, curling balls into the top corner, left foot. I think I'm putting something funny little way. I think it kind of helped me. It helped me left foot. My left foot was terrible when I went over. Kind of got me a little bit stronger, and I just kind of joined in. The coach obviously felt a bit of sympathy for me, like, oh Jesus Christ, look at this young fella, come on over, cross and whatever it was. So without talking myself up, I wasn't obviously Robbie Fowler-esque in terms of me finishing, but I'd walk off the training pitch and I'd think,
I can do this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be embarrassed by being out in the forwards, side foot, corner, back of the net, all well and good. But come match day,
nice.
Come match day, just could never take that into a game. Never had the kind of, I don't even know what you'd call it, maybe confidence, personality. Once I got into that part of the pitch, and I used, because I played full back, I had to play full back my first few years because I couldn't play centre half, wasn't big enough, strong enough, so they slung me out at right back, and I had to learn how to get forward, and so I would get myself into those positions, but always it was just couldn't get beyond that kind of hot potato, always looking for the next to set somebody in, cross a sideways pass. Never had that confidence to kind of, well, hold on, you've been doing this all week on the training ground with the lads. Just couldn't take it in, whatever it was, the self-confidence thing. I don't know what, lack of belief, or it might have been a bit of those things, maybe subconsciously lurking.
Did you ever speak to a coach about it? Is like, so in this scenario, honestly, because Kev says
speak
the same
to a coach
thing.
about it.
Yeah.
About what?
About, like, so I can do this in training, and when I get into a match situation, I can't.
No,
because that would have been showing weakness.
No.
But is that not exactly the type of thing now? In retrospect, if you could tip yourself on the shoulder at 16 and go, try it in a match, go and do it, and if it screws up, no one's going to say anything to you, because they all screw up as well.
No, I always, as I went through the game, and I came across players, a lot of players, young players with a lot of self-confidence, maybe some players too much who kind of went against them, but generally speaking, I always admired when I saw young players coming through or looking to break through, and they were like, they had it in them, that bit of confidence, and you couldn't kind of talk them down, and I always used to think, wow, I kind of admired that. I thought, wow.
But it's fake in many respects.
No, it's not. No, this is genuine kids who really kind of backed themselves, and maybe they didn't have, in terms of the individual qualities, but that got them. That kind of, they got more out of themselves before, because they really kind of backed themselves, had this inbuilt confidence within themselves, and And looking back, I think you're right. It probably would have helped. Have a little bit more of that probably would have.
A sports psychologist would have fixed that in like 2 sessions. Honestly, no? In retrospect.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest with you.
But if you were a coach now, if you're coaching now and you're
no, you're right. And if I saw a young player, I'd like to think as a coach, I'd take that. That would be my responsibility as a coach. I wouldn't be kind of, directing that player necessarily to see a psychologist. I'd see that as my job as a coach in terms of getting into the heads of players. But you're right. If you got those kind of people around you and you think players could benefit, those psychologists were coming in, and I saw teammates go in there to those 1v1 sessions, and I couldn't bring myself to do it, to be honest with you. But I did see players benefit from it, whatever it was, get them straight in the head, and whatever it was, whatever they say, whatever little indicators, pictures that they give them, I did see players kind of grow a little bit in that respect, and I did see the benefit. I had to not begrudgingly, but it was almost a case, well, it's not for me, but I can see how this is kind of helping. So I'd never talk it down. But back in the day, it just didn't happen, and I just didn't have it in me, to be honest with you. Clearly,
very interesting.
as it described in my goal scoring record.
Yeah, it's because it wasn't that, like me, it just gets brought up so much, and unfairly so. But again, we didn't see those 2 goals. It wouldn't have got brought up so much, not scoring goals, if we'd seen those 2 goals. So again, anybody with video footage out there. Google
wasn't around then. Up in the satellite coming, now the houses.
Yeah.
You couldn't train that on the old den back in.
It was the old den, was it? Were they both the old den? Right. Nice.
No, Fratton Park.
Nice. Also very atmospheric.
Oh, great stadium. Thankfully that's still around. For how much longer I don't know, but used to love me football. Atmosphere down there was electric. Really kind of vocal home support. I think somebody had the bell. Was it one they had it?
There's always one. There's always one. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. It's 11 minutes past 8. Kenny's staying with us. We're going to go through the World Cup of Manchester United's greatest ever centre backs. This is not going back that far. It's only since the Ferguson era.
No, since the start of football, so like 1992.
Okay, perfect.